This meeting is being recorded.
Hi there, Bill.
Good evening,
Hello.
everybody. Can you all hear me?
Hi,
Thumbs up.
Joseph.
Thumbs up if you can hear. Okay. Awesome.
Well, you can't see me have thumbs up.
Okay. All right.
Okay, thumbs up. How's that?
Great. And Danielle may end up muting everybody, but not right now. I think we're okay right now. We have a smaller, more intimate group tonight, it appears. But if you are here for the Cowlitz County Historical Museum's First Thursday program, you are in the right spot. So we'll just give another minute or two to see if there's any late comers to our program. This one's our staff picks program, where we get to pick the items that came in during the 2021 year, favorite items that kind of leaped out at us, and share them with you all, so you can see some of the trinkets and gizmos and objects that filter into the museum as people clear out their attics, or in one case we have a large item that came in. It did not come out of an attic. It came in on a truck, courtesy of, I believe it was Public Works helped us with that one, right, Bill?
I think it was maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be back in just 1 second here.
Hope everyone is having a great new year and that everyone's enjoying their New Year's and had fun celebration.
Okay, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. It's 7:02 p.m. and I want to welcome everybody to our first Thursday of the year for Cowlitz County Historical Museum. I'm Joseph Gavendick, your friendly museum director, and with us tonight are Danielle Robbins, who is our Zoom master and educator and program coordinator, and also Bill, our curator extraordinaire, who will be with us tonight. Unfortunately, Jim Elliott is not able to participate because of all the heavy rains that we had. He was out there with a shovel and clearing out a mess, and fortunately his basement is okay, but he was a little preoccupied today, so our program might be slightly abbreviated due to that. I also want to give a quick little shout out here, because we have a special elected official with us. Brad Thurman, our sheriff, is with us, so I just want to welcome Sheriff Thurman to the program tonight. Here's one of the little squad cars that I saw in his office, and he pointed out to me that there was a young gentleman that makes them up, and they're branded for our local county, and I ended up picking one up. So I like miniatures and things like that. So thank you, Sheriff Thurman, for joining us and your interest in local history. And we'll go ahead and give you a couple little updates. The museum is open for regular hours effective next week. We are open by appointment this week, as staff was taking care of some internal projects and training and things like that. And so we're full steam ahead next week. We have new exhibits on the horizon, which I'm excited to share. We have a pictorial exhibit. We have a Columbia Artist Association Spring Art Fair or Art Show is going to be here in March, and then we plan on having a exhibit focusing on the community of Riderwood and its connection with Longview as another temporary exhibit that will be up for probably half a year, 9 months or so. And then we will probably loan that up to the community of Riderwood to have on display up there. So we'll go ahead, and we've got 3 different PowerPoint productions that Danielle is going to be kind of managing here. And after the end of each PowerPoint, we're going to then allow a few questions and answers, and then we'll move to the next person. It'll start with me, then it'll go to Danielle, and then Bill will be our closer, and he'll finish us up with the grand slam. So without further ado, let's go ahead and we'll get the PowerPoint up. Danielle will be managing it, so you'll hear us verbally ask her to advance the slides. Okay, here we go. Here's the first page, and I should have had this up so you didn't have to look at my face, but let's go ahead to the next slide, please, Danielle, because I would like to welcome you all to next First Thursday, our program February 3rd, 2022, which is also my birthday. We have Hans Scholfaus, who is a local artist, photographer, European traveler, and he has a particular interest in East Germany. He went to college in Germany, and he was also very involved with the Longview Outdoor Gallery. He's got a black and white photography exhibition showing the leftovers of the communist landscape of East Germany between 2006 until 2014. And the new material of approximately 30 enlargements were taken by Hans, who is a retired Longview Public Library employee. And the show will last until probably mid-March is our plan. So it'll go up on February 22nd it'll go up January 22nd, which is a Saturday, will be the installation, and then it'll be up for about a month and a half. I did want to mention, though, that in these two pictures, he has captions that go with them. And the first one is the one with the just the window with the curtain kind of waving through the open window. And it says here in Hans's words, "There's something mesmerizing watching the wind as it plays on a curtain. The weathered window frame left open by former residents, taking all their belongings, stripping the apartment bare, right down to removing the light bulbs, yet leaving the mousy gray curtain behind. They left the window open, seemingly not wanting it left in a musty, vacant room. A little too metaphoric, but perhaps a fitting curtain call to the former DDR." The next one with the person walking in front of the doorway is captioned with, "There is a melancholy heaviness in this picture. The old lady weighted down by her shopping bags, the distressed look of the building with its broken windows and tattered posters, the tangled weeds and the overcast sky. All these qualities remind one of the stark and bleak past. With this backdrop, the effect is one still being struck in DDR time." And there's a picture of Hans. So I hope you all come to our next First Thursday, where he will talk about his travels throughout former Eastern Germany and his photography adventures, and he'll talk a little bit about some of the pieces that he will have on display in our temporary gallery. This is, I think, the first time we've had a local artist highlighted at the museum, at least in a long time, in my time, certainly. So we'll go ahead now and launch into what you are all here for, which is really to see what came into the museum the last year. And I'm going to highlight World War I colorized postcards, Longview Community Church piano, and that's what came in on that truck from that Public Works was so gracious to help us with, and COVID-19 artifacts that have arrived during the current history being made. So we'll go ahead and start with these World War I postcards. These are, it was common to have colorized postcards a long time ago, and so these are photographs that then somebody touches them up with color. They were donated from a prior board member for the society, Mela Cad, and they were, and Bill, I might need you to correct me on this, but I believe they were her great aunt's postcards, right?
I believe grandmother's.
Or grandmother's postcard.
Her mother's
postcards. And so she found them, and I might need you to help me with this too, Bill, because she brought them directly to you, but I kind of took a liking to them because of my interest in military history and all that. But she brought them in, so we decided to, or you decided that we would take them in, and we have lots of postcards in our collection. And the first one that was there was called it was called Bayonet Exercise, and here they are with bags hanging from beams. The next one we'll go to is called Rifle Drill. And then the next one is Practice, The Charge. And I like this one because it's very animated. And then we'll go to the next one, which is the Practice March. And we have 9 of these cars. And my favorite one here is actually the hike, because you have the gentleman who was not wearing his campaign hat and he doesn't look too happy. But then the fellow right in front of him sure is a happy camper. So I just get a kick out of what is going on here in these pictures. And we have lots of old black and white pictures in the museum. In fact, we have a large one of a logging camp, and you can look at all the different expressions on everybody's face, and you kind of wonder what was going on through their mind when that photograph was taken. Okay, we'll go to the next one. This one's called Inspecting the Bridge. And then after the hike, this is probably blister control here. And notice the youth of these particular fellows here. They look pretty young. And then the next one, please, is Double Time. And then the final one is Lined Up for Mess. So now we'll go to we got a couple more here. This is the back side of the postcard. And then if you go ahead and to the next slide, this is just for scale, so you can see. Now, we'll go to the next item here, which is the Longview Community Church piano. And this is a picture of the church in its earlier days. And I love these old pictures of Longview. I'm sure many of you have seen them, where it's just this big flat expanse and there's not nearly as many trees there. It's amazing to look at, especially pictures from the old west side where everything was just so little, and now you walk through or drive through and the trees are absolutely enormous. The church was originally organized in October 21st, 1923, and they needed, of course, a piano for it. And Bill, I might need you to help correct me. When did construction end on the church? Was it 1927?
25.
25, it was completed. Okay.
Yeah, I think.
And so they purchased a Lexington upright piano, which was manufactured in Boston, Massachusetts, somewhere around 1920. It was a used piano. Its serial number was 74004. And it was purchased in 1924 from Sherman, Clay and Company of Portland, Oregon for $236. And it was paid in installments. It was paid off in September of 1926. And it was used first at the church community building while the church was still under construction. And it was donated to the museum because it could no longer be properly tuned without being completely rebuilt. And we'll go ahead to the next slide, please. These are just a couple more pictures. We have a few decorations on top of it because of we were decorated for the holidays, and that's when this picture was taken. And then you can open it up and you can see all the instrumentation inside. And then we'll go to the next slide, please. And this is actually kind of what makes these items really kind of exciting, is when you have additional documentation that goes with it. So we have a letter of remittance of the final payment here, acknowledging that the piano has been paid in full, dated 1926. And then if we go to the next slide, please, we have the contract that is marked paid for the delivery of the piano that was included with that letter. And then we also have the back side of that contract. And then the bill of sale issued upon full payment, dated in 1926. So again, it's just a piano, but with this documentation, it helps strengthen the provenance of it. So it is a piano that tells a story of Longview Community Church. So it's nice to get the piano, but it's to me, I think it's great to have the documentation that helps support it. And then I don't know, Bill, do you have any other, you helped move this piano. Do you have any comments or things you wanted to share about the moving experience? Or did Public Works do all the heavy work and you got to do the like air traffic control and tell them what to do?
Public Works did most of the work, and they did a great job.
Okay,
They made
awesome.
it easy.
Cool, awesome. Okay, so a shout out for Public Works, and we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. And I'm going to give a shout out to another department, which is Health and Human Services, and the director, Carol Harrison. I contacted her and asked her earlier on during the pandemic if she could please contact people amongst her circles that could save any items that have been used or would be used related to our current COVID-19 pandemic. And she was kind enough to do so, and she was putting things together in a box, and I waited months and months, and I didn't want to pester her about it. And finally one day she said, "I've got it, it's all ready for you, come and pick it up." So if we go to the first slide here, these are directional signage that were over at the county fairgrounds to direct people to the where to go for the, originally it was a testing clinic, a drive-through testing, and then it became drive-through vaccination with dollar bills for scale. And then we'll go to the next slide, please. And again, more signage. We had these actually laying out at the museum by the front, not the front desk, but by the administration office desk while we were sorting through them. And a couple of people walked into the back of the office and said, "Are you guys starting a clinic here?" So we decided we would put them away so that people didn't have the idea that we were going to do that. We'll go ahead to the next slide, please. Here's a map of the fairgrounds with the Washington Street is on the left side, and the bottom is 7th Avenue. So that, all right, thanks, Danielle. Are you scanning it there so we can all see, so that you can orient it? And that's one of the signs to help people find their way through the county fairgrounds. And we'll go ahead to the next slide, please. Here's a few other goodies. We have a face shield that was not actually used, but she gave us one that was packaged in the plastic as they would have received it. And then some handouts that would go out to people. That we've been archiving a lot of paper documentation from this current situation that we're in. And we'll go ahead to the next slide. And these are vaccination cards, and they're not filled out, and they just kind of show the diversity of people in America. She gave these to me and I didn't think anything of it. I saw the one card and it was in English and Spanish, which is very common. But then I saw Korean and Ukrainian and Russian and Chinese and Vietnamese. And that's what's represented here in these cards. And as it turns out, this was just a sampling of the cards that they had. They had cards in all different kinds of languages. So this really shows that they're trying to reach out to every community, everybody about the vaccine. And so they printed in multiple languages. And I'm glad we have these cards here as examples of that. We'll go ahead to the next one here. These are the early testing kits, and they are dated April 2020. So think about how quickly they came out with the test for them, as this, it's just a month prior to April. It was around St. Patrick. No, it was Friday the 13th of March of 2020 when everything started to really kind of get shut down, and St. Patrick's Day. And so these all came out about a month after. So these are very early test kits. And then I think the last slide is my favorite item that we got, was these little vaccine bottles that have been used. I've seen them on TV and I just never knew how little they were. And I've never seen one at any of the clinics. I never looked at them, but when I saw them in person, I was amazed how little they are. And here's a quarter just to show you the scale of size of these two used Pfizer BioNTech containers. And so I think that sums up the three areas that I found of interest. And if anybody has any questions, Danielle can unmute anybody if there's a question about either the postcards.
Actually, right now, everyone can unmute themselves if they want to ask a question.
Oh, good. So if anybody has a question about either the postcards or the piano or comments too, or the COVID items that have come in through Health and Human Services. No.
Hey, Joseph. This
Hey,
is David. How are you?
David. Good. How are you doing, David?
I'm doing well. I was wondering if you were able to collect any stories related to COVID besides that great collection of objects that you got.
Absolutely. I've got a file in here actually of we have a survey that's actually still up on our website, and you can click on it and have your stories about how the COVID pandemic has impacted your life. And so I've got a file full of stories that people have done. And we also did another push out to get those stories several months ago in partnership with the Historical Preservation Commission for the county.
Right.
And so yeah, we have tried to get as many stories as we could. And that's an excellent question, because you want to know what people are thinking as it's happening, to record history in the making.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, David. And for those who might not be familiar, David is my predecessor here. He was the director of the museum for 31 years before retiring in 2017. Any other questions? And then we'll turn it over to Danielle. Are you ready, Danielle? Okay, so Danielle's going to go ahead and start with her items that, and by the way, Danielle I had to have a conversation about those World War I cards, because one way she always likes to start this program is she always takes the first item that was ever given to the museum of the year, and it happened to be those cards, and she decided there were some other things that she wanted to do and let me do the military related stuff.
Figured you could handle World War I better than I could. So I'm glad to hand them over, and thank you guys all so much. I'm looking forward to this. I hope you enjoy what I have to share with you. Just give me a second to bring it up. Which is one more second. And that should do it. So welcome everyone. For my staff picks, since Joseph took the first item, I went ahead and took the second item, 2021-002. And the second item that we actually received was a kilt from Kelso, Scotland, which is a lot of fun. So what happened is in 1988, the mayor of Kelso was Richard Woods, and he and his wife, Leslie, were invited to Kelso, Scotland for some summer festivities there. And they got to go and as a sister city program and invited some tourism and some looking around. I have two pictures here of Kelso, Scotland in the mid-1800s. And so those would have been pictures when about the time that Peter Crawford would have been leaving Kelso, Scotland, is when those two black and white drawings are from. The Highlander kilt that we have is a wool kilt, which would be fantastic in weather right now, like what we have out there right now, if it wasn't collection items. It's also the Buchanan plaid, which is the style. And the reason why they got Buchanan plaid is because apparently the city of Kelso, right here, you can see I grabbed their logo off the website, and you can see there's the Buchanan plaid in their logo. It's also been on city of Kelso flags, and it's, I don't know why. That was the one thing. If anyone knows why Kelso, Washington has decided to use Buchanan plaid as sort of the city plaid, I would love to hear it, because I looked and I couldn't figure out why we went with that particular plaid. The only thing I did find out was that Buchanan plaid was one of the very first tartans to be registered back when they first started to register tartans. It was one of the first, and therefore it's also one of the most popular. But beyond that, I would love any other news. So they brought back this wonderful plaid kilt from our sister city, and then decided to donate it this year. So we are really thankful to have this, and it was our second item right after those World War I pictures. My second item that I chose is so starts off with this picture here of Wallace Elementary. This is actually a picture that we got from the collections this year, taken in the 1950s, Miss Bloyd's class in front of Wallace Elementary School. What's interesting about this picture is it is one of the only pictures we have of this school building. And you can see how much of the school building you can see from here. Not much. We kind of went on a hunt and found out that we have like a couple of negatives with like kids getting off the school bus, and part of the school is in the background, but you can't really see the school. So it turns out that we don't actually have any good pictures of Wallace Elementary, the building that was in town from 1942 until 1921, or sorry, 2021. I know what year I'm in, 2021, because unfortunately this, we do have a bunch of the old one. That's right. I did throw these in. This is the old Wallace School that was built in 1912, and then it was added to in 1924, which you can see here in the flood picture of 1933, how much longer the school building got. So we have several of this school building, but we don't have any of this school building. And this one is actually one I snagged off of the school's website, just so you could see which building I'm talking about. Because this Wallace School building, built in 1942, I think I said it backwards last time, sorry, 1942, and 2021, this last year, it was torn down and destroyed. And there was one day when everyone was invited to come from the community, and like if they wanted to take a part of the school, they could. And then a few days later, Bill and Joseph were invited to actually come on site. You can see they got vests and hard hats, and we're kind of given a grand tour to go out there and see if they could find anything for the museum collections. Do either of you really fast want to share about what it was like going there and having the bulldozers work around you?
Bill, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay, it's tricky walking around there because it was all rubble, and I must admit that it would have been nice if we could have gotten there before they tore it down, because it was really like picking through a bunch of matchsticks and brick and whatnot. Whereas to see some of the elements of the architecture in position inside hallways may have been able to give us an opportunity to pull some things that people would recognize more specifically as part of the school, as opposed to bricks and conduit and other pieces. But it was definitely interesting walking around the rubble. And on a side note, we are trying to get permission to walk through the Reynolds aluminum building that is going to be demolished, and hopefully we'll get through that before they demolish it. And Bill and I and the Historic Preservation Commission may be able to photograph and hopefully take a few items from it to preserve. And I'll turn it to Bill if you have any thoughts about that wonderful. It was a beautiful late winter or early spring day when we went out there. It's in spring, I think, early spring.
February.
Oh no, it's February. Okay.
Yeah, even in the state that you see it in the pictures there, we were still able to find a few things to keep from the demolition. I don't know if Danielle's gonna
Those are my
talk about
items. That's my next.
Okay.
That is my next one. Is those
all,
items, yeah.
all yours then, Danielle. All yours.
So just highlights of what it was like trying to get those items. But yes, they were able to find a few things, and those are the things that I've claimed for my next item from the collection, or several items from the collection. These are the items that they were actually able to salvage from the wreckage. And as you could see from the pictures, like Joseph said, it wasn't like they could just go in and take best pics. These are sort of some of the things they found. They found one of the bricks and also one section of brick. And it's really interesting. I didn't know this, but apparently the way that it was made was the bricks were made with these holes, and then the concrete went into the holes, and that's what helped hold it together. So you can see on this end, that little knob would have gone into one of these 3 holes on a brick. So we've got some of the bricks and a section. Also have a ceramic made pencil holder. I'm actually a Longview student. I went to RA Long, so go RA Long, go Jacks. But I love ceramics class. So I love the fact that we found a ceramic cup holder here among the rebel, because yeah, that's about what I made, or those kinds of things. So, and I loved my ceramics class. So I love that this item got saved. There's also a sign here, this hand-drawn sign. You can't read it, but it says right here, it says in meeting. So this is something teachers could hang on the door if they were in a meeting to stop students from coming in and interrupting. And then this long one right here, which looks very deceiving in the picture, that's actually 20 pounds. And when I found it to take the picture of it, it was like, oh, that is 20 pounds trying to pick that up. And you wouldn't think it, but it's solid metal about as long as my arm, with the rope hanging off of it. And so then that would have been the counterweight to a window sash, which the windows in the school were very long, very large. Probably you don't think about fabric being heavy, but when you get enough of it, it really is. So these are the items that were saved from Wallace School. And I, of course, love anything that has to do with schools in our area, because so I did actually get to present in Wallace School. For anyone who doesn't know, Wallace School is our only school in the area that actually teaches year-round school. The rest of the schools are on a summer off, but for Wallace, they have about a month off in the summertime, but the rest of the time they're going to school, and they just stretch it out. And so they have like a couple of longer gaps in there, but they go to school all year long. And so during that month off break in summertime, I have been invited a couple of times to Wallace, twice in fact, to come and do presentations with the kids in sort of more like a fun open learning style. That was at the old Wallace building, but I have actually been invited to the new Wallace School as well. So this is the new Wallace School being built, which I also took off their website. But this school was completed in time for last school year, or last summer. During summer break, because last school year was such a mess, and half the year was online and half the year was in person, and half the year was like sometimes kids are in school and sometimes they're not. So a lot of the local school districts wanted to have a very robust summer school program to really kind of get kids excited about coming back to school and being in school buildings. And Wallace was one of the 2 schools where Kelso hosted their summer school programs, Wallace and Barnes, I believe it was. And I actually got to present at both during the summertime. So I've actually got to do programs with kids in this brand new, nice new gym, even before school started, and even before the gym teacher got to hang out in their gym. I got to do school programs with kids in that gym during the summertime. And it was a lot of fun. For my summer school programs, I did a program called Pioneer Work versus Play, where I do sort of talk to them a little bit about pioneer jobs and have some pass around artifacts from the Ed collection. And then we play some community games like merry-go-round, which is a little bit like Duck, Duck, Goose. So that way they can because kids back in the day would have played a lot of games with their friends. And then we have stations, and you can see some of the toys I had at stations: jump ropes and pick up sticks and Jacob's ladders and cup and balls and yo-yos and sewing cards. And so all these different stations. And oh yeah, that's a rag doll that the kids could then go out and play with these historical toys. And we also made paper tops. That way they could have a little toy to take home with them. So it was a lot of fun. And some comments from some of the teachers. I try to take the pictures, but they're hard to read, so I actually have them here. One of them said, wonderful. These children had no previous experience with the artifacts. Hands-on makes a huge difference in increasing understanding. And this one over here said things like, they love the hands-on fun. The kids could relate to current games, to the Pioneer Kids games. And one of the kids actually said that the experience was pretty good. The iron, so I actually passed around some old irons for ironing your clothes that pioneers would have used. The irons looked not that heavy, but they were, which was a lot of fun because I let them actually hold it and feel it and get that real hands-on experience. So that was a lot of fun. Just to give you a feel for this, how weird this year has been, in 4 days of summer school, I reached 324 elementary students. And then I also had 3 consecutive days of summer school programming with 31 middle schoolers. During the entire school year before that, I reached 272 elementary students and 97 middle schoolers, some of them online and some of them like in the classroom and some of them with modified in the classroom. So just in case you're counting, that means I reached 4 more students during the summer than I did during the school year. So be combining the elementary and the middle school together. For having to adjust some of these programs, this is actually leading into my final item. Some of these programs I had to do online, and some of these programs I did with modified. For example, I would go into schools, but the classrooms would be divided and would be smaller. And so I had to prep a lot of the artwork beforehand, and then I would give it to the teachers, and then they could do the crafts with their students after modifying them. Normally, I would do it with them in the class. So one teacher says, it was wonderful to have the art projects prepped for our students. Another one said, the pictures and time was perfect. We didn't get to have any field trips this year, so this program was great. Those were the ones I actually went in classroom. For the ones that I had to do it online and do it the same way that you and I are doing this program right now, doing a document camera, doing PowerPoints. I also used a document camera for my final item, which are these Native American tools that were found. So we have a whole bunch of Native American tools that were in the collections, brought into collections, and some of them came with paperwork and some of them did not. And a bunch of them ended up in our offsite storage. A bunch of the ones that did not end up in our offsite storage. So when we cleaned out our offsite storage this year, we found 5 boxes of the Native American tools without any paperwork and without any labels on them. And so we brought those back over here and have been pawing through those. When I went to college and took my museology classes, my museum study classes, I remember one of my professors saying that in a perfect world, everything would be perfectly labeled and always have perfect paperwork and everything would be knowing where it was and where it came from. But he said that when you get into museums, you're going to find out that that's not the way that it always works, that museums are really a collection of like grandma's attics and collectors who are like philanthropic and want to like donate their collections, and that's sort of how museum collections come together. And we don't always know where everything came from. So 5 boxes of Native American tools, we don't know. We know where some things came from, but not other things. But I have been using these tools for my presentations online to the kids. When I can't take things into the classroom, I decide, well, the upside to this is that if I'm in the museum, I get to use real Native American artifacts that I could never take with me into the school. And I just use a document camera to show them off, and I wear white gloves and I show them off to the kids and handle them and let them see real artifacts as opposed to like the replicas that I take with them into the school. So trying to make the best of a bad situation. So some of the artifacts, lots of fish weights. Most of the 5 boxes of Native American tools that we found, most of them are fish weights, which you can see here in this drawing how those would work. One I do use a lot is the ad. It's hard to tell in this picture, but this one is actually flat on the back side, which is where it would have strapped into the wood. And then it has a pretty good groove right here. So it'd be like this one with one good groove tying it down. And then the last one here, it's either a maul, which you can see is sort of like a hand hammer, or a pestle, which of course for grinding up food and other things. So fantastic that we have these in our collections, that we found them this past year, because I've been using them this past year to help embellish the kids' programs for those who could only get it online. And just some comments from teachers from there. One teacher said, I love having Danielle be able to do Zoom presentations. She was excellent with the students and very knowledgeable about the artifacts of hunting and gathering of the tribes, which are what I use those artifacts for. And another one, I really appreciate your presenting the information on Zoom. The students really enjoyed it. A student shared that she really enjoyed seeing the toys kids played with, and that was actually an Oregon Trail one I did online, and I had some real toys that I could show them, and also an Oregon Trail journal. I showed them a real Oregon Trail journal, again, from the collections. So those are my top picks for the year. Scottish kilt, what we got from the Wallace School, and a picture of the Wallace School. And these Native American items here to help tell and teach and share with kids. One last comment, going back really fast. If anyone has any good pictures of this school, the one built in 1942 and torn down in 1921, as I said, we don't have any good pictures of the school. We only have some with the school like in the background or up close with kids in front door. So if anyone else has any great pictures of that school building, consider donating them to us or leaving them to us someday in the future, just to help, fill in a gap in our collections. So thank you so much. And I will take questions now, if anyone has any questions. And you guys can unmute yourselves once again.
Danielle?
Yes.
Not being from the area, I'm not familiar with this school, but when they tore it down, is that where the new one's being built, or is something else going to be constructed there?
No, they tore down the school where you saw the picture of Joseph and Bill in the rubble, and then they cleared out all that rubble, and then they built the school. It's already completely built. That's where I taught that presentation.
On the same site?
Exact same site, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
One comment too is that that pottery that was made, that was a pen holder that some teacher had, that probably a student had given to them. I was just amazed that it was still intact, considering how everything was just driven over by an excavator, and that we were just looking around, and all of a sudden there it was, just sitting there, this craft from a child that was probably sitting on the shelf of a windowsill or something in a classroom, and everything's getting knocked around, and that somehow landed in the right spot, covered and protected the right way. And I guess it's like all the china and dishes that they find on the floor by the Titanic. I guess it was in just the right spot, I suppose.
yeah, a piece of pottery that survived the bricks falling around it is impressive. Any other questions? If not, then Bill, you're up.
Okay. There we go. All right. Thank you. All right. So in July of last year, we got a photo print of the Kelso Hospital. Thank you. This is an enlarged copy of a postcard, which some of you may have seen before. I know Bill Ammons had a copy up at his barbershop, but this is the first copy the museum has gotten of this image. The photo shows two buildings being used for the hospital on the north side of Academy Street. Next, please. Behind the building on the left is the newly built Chinook Hotel. This would date the photo to about 1923, 24, or 25. Next, please. If we take a look at some of the few photos the museum already had of the hospital, you can see that the fronts of the buildings line up nicely. But wait, you might be thinking, hadn't I heard, oh, go back, yeah, there you go, okay. Hadn't I heard that the hospital building was on the south side of Academy, not the north? And why does the building on the left look a bit familiar? The answer to the first question would be yes, also, not instead. And the answer to the second question is because it still stands, but not in the same place. The Kelso General Hospital was started in March 1916 by Dr. Alfred F.V. Davis, and he was joined by his brother, Dr. Frank Davis, in 1919. Next slide, please. After the latter's Army service ended. Some of Dr. Frank Davis's story can be found in some of our older quarterlies. Other doctors also had their offices nearby, such as Dr. John F. Christensen and Dr. Earl Hackett. In late 1925 or 1926, Dr. Hackett bought the building on the left, next slide please, and had it moved 2 blocks north and 1 block east to 301 Cowlitz Way. Next slide, please. Where a few years later, it became a funeral home. Next slide, please. Which has been added onto over the years. That couple of pictures kind of show the evolution of how the building was added onto. Now, after that hospital building was moved, the Columbian Hotel, next slide please, was built in its place, and hospital operations moved across the street to a former house at 208 Academy on the south side. Next slide, please. This was an ideal location for both Dr. Davis's, as their residences were on either side of it. The hospital remained there until it finally closed in July 1934. We have these dates because in the 1980s, or maybe it was actually around 1990, Dr. Frank Davis donated the hospital's patient register to the museum. Now, you might be asking, how did they move an entire building like that? The answer is carefully. Next slide, please. This picture may give some idea what it was like. It is of the St. Rose Catholic Church Rectory being moved across 26th Avenue in the spring of 1959. Speaking of moving things, let's talk a bit about buses. Next slide, please. Bus tokens have been around for quite a while. They were usually offered at a discount to the regular one-time fare, so were popular with frequent riders. Many years ago, the museum acquired several rolls of bus tokens from Longview's first bus service, the Longview Public Service Company, which, like many early Longview utilities, was a subsidiary of the Long Bell Lumber Company. It was started in 1924 and ran until November 1954. Now, in June, we got a donation of a bus token from a company I had not heard of. Next slide, please. The Longview Kelso Bus Company. Looking in the old Polk's city directories, I only found that company listed between 1959 and 1965. Diving deeper into old newspapers, the story became a lot longer and more complicated. The Longview Public Service Company had been losing money and ridership since 1947, as more and more people were buying automobiles. By 1954, Long Bell had determined to get out of the bus business and sell off the buses and equipment. Service was set to be discontinued on November 19, 1954. The week before that was supposed to happen, a buyer emerged to salvage the community's bus service. Next slide, please. Ben Lilleboe of Kelso bought the 12 buses and equipment, formed the Longview Kelso Bus Company, and continued service as normal. Between 1961 and 1965, the regular bus fare was 25 cents, or 5 tokens for $1. By 1965, after many cost-cutting measures, including going down to 5 buses, the company was still in the red. Lilleboe himself was able to stay afloat because of his other business ventures, but he was ready to get rid of the bus company. In July of 1965, next slide please, he sold the company to Glenn Chambers, who ran 2 convenience stores in Longview. Despite rate hikes going up to 35 cents or 4 tokens for $1.25 by March 1967, and going down to 3 buses, Chambers was also soon in over his head. Several times during his ownership, he threatened to entirely shut down service if the city of Longview didn't either subsidize or buy out the company. And service was set to end once again in July 1969 when, next slide please, Les and Verone Stiebritz bought the company's 2 remaining buses to keep them going. Verone had been a substitute driver for the company for a few years, and her husband Les was a retired warehouser worker. The 2 of them took over driving themselves to cut expenses. It was still not enough to make it profitable. Every time they thought about shutting down, the newspaper was flooded with cries of how badly bus service was needed in the community. In June 1975, the Stiebritzes decided they needed a vacation and time to fix up their buses, so they stopped service for 6 weeks. When they returned in August, they discovered that in their absence, the city of Longview had started their own public bus service with 3 buses they had leased. After a month of competing bus services driving nearly the same routes at the same times, Longview finally decided to buy out the Stiebritzes. The Longview Kelso Bus Company was no more, but that was the beginning of our local publicly subsidized bus service that we still have today. Now, serendipitously, this year we also got another donation with a connection to this saga. Turns out that Glenn Chambers, who owned the bus company from 1965 to 1969, next slide please, was also an inventor with several patented products. We received examples of 2 of these products in August. One of the inventions was, next slide please, hook and wrap bands for hair ponytails. It seems pretty simple now, but back in the 1950s and 60s, this simple rubber band with eye hooks on the end must have seemed super convenient compared to tying ribbons in your hair. He packaged them in packs of 1, 6, or 8 and likely sold them at his convenience stores. The other Glenn Chambers invention we got, next slide please, was his Fisnick pop bottle topper. The packaging says, make an instant ice cream float. The Fisnick was a 2-part plastic ball that separates in the middle with a spout on each end. A scoop of ice cream or crushed ice is put inside. One spout is put in the top of a soda bottle and you drink from the other spout. Chambers had licensed the manufacturing and distribution to Hayes Merchandise Incorporated of Seattle, and that's who made the 2 examples that were donated. Now, interestingly, the donation also included an imitation of the Fisnick, next slide please, called a pop ball, which was made in Michigan, along with a copy of a telegram to Chambers' distributor about the copycat product, advising that lawyers get involved. Now, we don't know the outcome of any litigation that may have arisen from this, but since Chambers held a patent, the law was likely on his side. And those are the 3 groups of items, or 3 items are groups of items, that I have chosen to talk about. Next slide. Any questions or comments?
I have a comment. I think that pop bottle thing would be a lot of fun, but not if it accidentally broke open in the middle of where you're trying to drink it, and then there goes all the ice cream and soda down your top. But otherwise, it looked like a lot of fun.
It looks like it'd be too much fizzy for me, I think, almost. If it passes that ice cream and all that, it might, I don't know, but interesting idea though.
Go ahead, Dave.
Hi, Bill. This is David Freese. Interesting, those inventions makes me think of the different inventions that have been made here in Cowlitz County through the years. It'd be interesting to generate a list or a quarterly article or something like that. But it seems to me that somebody invented a holder for a crayon used for marking lumber. And of course, the big inventions, Molt Taylor's aero car. But I can't think of any others right off, but I'm sure there are.
I think I've heard of a few more.
Wasn't the 2x4 stud also invented by Longbell? Which is basically the shortened, it's not 8 feet long, it's slightly shorter to fit in a frame. I'd heard that, I thought that was a Longbell idea to save on lumber.
That I don't know, but certainly the mills have come up with various products, Longview fiber and others.
Any other questions or comments? No?
Anybody have a favorite item that they saw tonight? How about that? Is there a fan favorite that reached out to anybody that they thought, hey, that's a really neat item? Crickets.
I really like the postcards.
Thanks, David. And we have a lot of postcard images in our collection too. That have we done a postcard exhibit or postcard art before?
I know we've had some First Thursday programs with postcards.
Not that comes to mind. Not generated by the museum that I can think of. Were those postcards? Do you know where they were? Those taken? Was it like some camp or or a training area?
I don't know the location. They're published by the Illustrated Postal Card and Novelty Company in New York.
Okay.
And but I couldn't recognize any features in the background other than the campaign hats. I thought were interesting because World War I is really where the hardened helmets started to come into play. German soldiers originally had pickelhaube helmets made out of leather with little spikes on them, and then they adopted the Stahlhelm helmet, which is a steel helmet, and the British had those Tommy helmets, which the Americans didn't have a helmet, so we just adopted the British style. Those all kind of came in during World War I, and a lot of those helmet designs actually go back to, you know, like medieval era style helmets. If you look at some British infantry, they wore helmets that look somewhat like Tommy helmets. Yeah, Mom? You have to unmute yourself, Mom. You're still muted. There you go.
Okay. Back to the COVID collection for just as I recall, you had one segment and you had the 1915 influenza epidemic. And there were a lot of personal stories of how that affected families that was in your area. Is there anything underway or any plan to trace stories today of how the pandemic has affected your community and the results of, you know, economically and the stores and people's personal lives? I thought that was very touching to hear the stories from 1915, and it might at some point down the way be very interesting for some people to know how it affected your community. You're collecting a few things now. There's a lot more to come, I'm sure. But with all the variants out there, there's going to be a lot more stories. Anyone collecting those stories or videos or movies for your collection?
We're trying to collect those stories. David had asked a very similar question. Are we trying to document stories? But as far as it's almost like we would need to have somebody standing outside of Fred Meyer or Walmart and start soliciting people to start talking to us, because I will admit I'm a little underwhelmed with the lack of participation that people have had when we put it out in the newspaper. I think we did a public service announcement on the radio asking people to check into our website and click on the link to put their stories in, and we had a bunch come in, but I was really surprised that we didn't get hundreds. I thought we would get hundreds of stories of people that were all, you know, for a while people were at home and a lot of people not working, so I thought, oh, we have a lot of these people that have idle time, they're going to want to type up their stories or share the stories, and it didn't happen. So I'm not sure the best way to do that. But
it may be too soon also, maybe. In time you will get some more stories. Curious how that would, because this is the biggest pandemic, I think, 1915.
Yeah, and as we're collecting the material now, I mean, we're not going to be able to, I'm just thinking in the future for a exhibit that could be 10 or 20 or 25 years down the road, whoever's here then will be appreciative that we actually collected some of these items instead of let it all get, you know, I just imagine all this material getting thrown away by the hospitals as they use them, and that we should preserve some of this to tell this story.
I was thinking hospitals also, but of course we have these privacy issues today that they probably didn't have in the early days, but there might be information from hospitals as to numbers or statistics of numbers of cases or deaths even in the community. Okay, thank you.
We have a comment in the comment box from Darcy, who I don't think has a mic, so she wrote in the comment box. She says, I was pleasantly surprised to recognize the building that used to be the hospital and was moved in Kelso. And I'm pretty sure she means the one with like the railing, because I did the same thing. I saw that, went, I know that one. So that's really cool from yours, Bill.
Yeah, the funeral home is a pretty recognizable building. And yeah, it's great that it's still there.
So any other final questions or comments? And we have our next first Thursday will be on February 3rd. A new pictorial exhibit will go up on the 22nd, which is Saturday. We're not going to necessarily have a reception or anything like that. It's just going to be installed, and then people can come and see it. But Hans will be presenting for First Thursday about his photography. And then we're going to have in March, we're going to have the author who wrote part of our historical quarterly on the mail service in Cowlitz County come in and talk about the mail service here a little bit more in depthly. And let's see, I think that's about what we have going on that. And then some new, after the pictorial exhibit comes down, we'll have the Columbia Artists Association have their spring art show here. They'll be up for about 3 weeks in the gallery, and that'll be a new audience to bring into the museum. And they're really thrilled to use this space. They were looking for a space where they could have their art show. So we'll be able to kind of cross-fertilize our museum and art communities here in Cowlitz County. So looking forward to bringing in some new people into the museum and some new enthusiasm. And any other questions or final thoughts for the evening, everybody? Thank you so much. And thank you for the applause, Sheriff, there. I see that on the screen. We thank you all for coming tonight. We're glad to be here again. We do look forward to getting on site again. I hope at some point in the near future. Danielle and I were just talking tonight. We were both on site here at the museum with Bill, and just said, gosh, it's a shame that we see that empty meeting room and it's just so quiet in there. And we miss just visiting with everybody right before and after the programs. So we look forward to getting back on site again. But until then, we'll see you in Brady Bunch format. So have a good night, and thank you for joining us, and stay safe out there. We'll see you next month. Take care.
Night.
Good night.